Before getting into the second part of this video, just want to let you guys know some important things. So I'm only replacing the rack and pinion. So you only need to replace the things that I'm doing here. And I'm not removing the subframe completely. I'm just removing some bolts so it can open up, so it can have access to the rear engine mount. I'm using two 3-ton jacks from Harbor Freight, and they're not even extended. They're just on its lowest height. And you just need enough space that you can fit under there. And that's it. Alright guys, here is where the fun begins. I got the car up, tires are off, and I just want to show you this opening right here is where we're going to be pulling out the rack. And the first thing we got to do is take off these outer tie rods. First thing we got to do is remove this 19mm jam nut. Then on the bottom of the outer tie rod is a 17mm castle nut. And don't forget to remove the cotter pin. You can just take that out by hand. And don't forget guys, when you're backing out your outer tie rod, count how many rotations you got so you know how many rotations to reinstall it on the new inner tie rod. Quick note here guys, when you loosen up the castle nut, leave a little bit on there so when you separate the tie rod from the knuckle, it has something to catch it on the bottom. And don't forget guys, you got to do the same thing on the passenger side. Alright guys, this is what we look like. We're going to have all this space to yank out that rack. Now my outer tie rod, I think it was probably the original ones that came with the car. The fluid from inside of the boot had leaked out and hardened around the knuckle, and it didn't matter how hard I hit it, it just wasn't coming out. So I had to get some pry bars, slip it in there, break that seal, and then it came out. But now we got all the space. Hey guys, I forgot to mention one thing about this jam nut. In order to loosen it, it's going to be to the right. And remember, it's still the same direction on the other side. Gonna bring you guys in really close here to show you something you may or may not have in your model Corolla. So you see this block right there. Let me get you in focus there. Okay, right here. That's a bumper mount. You might not have it in your car, but the motor mount is right back here. And I need to remove that so I can have access to that 17mm bolt. This is being held down by two 10mm bolts, in case you're wondering what that thing is, because some cars might not have it. Alright, since I've got all this space now and I can move this inner tie rod out of the way, I'm going to go after the 10mm bolt that's holding in that engine bumper. There you go guys, that's what I'm talking about right there. And really quick guys, it was a 12mm bolt. Alright guys, this is what it looks like. So now that this is out of the way, I got a clear shot right at that 17mm bolt right there. I'm going to get a 15-inch extension and rip that thing out. Once you get under the car, this is the first thing that you're going to remove. It is attached onto another bolt, which I'm going to show you in just a little bit. It's being held in place by these two 14mm nuts. Alright, we're now underneath the car on the passenger side, and this bolt right here is where the brace was attached. Now, there are 6 19mm bolts that we have to remove so we can lower the subframe, hopefully low enough so we can start to work the rack off. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the same thing on the other side. Alright, I pushed you guys just a little bit more forward. You can see the motor mount is right up here, and it's being held in place by these 3 17mm nuts. So we got to remove those. And I think this guy is another 19. And that should be all we need to wiggle it loose. Alright guys, I got a couple of really important tips before you start taking out the bolts from the subframe. Number one, have a way of organizing the bolts so you remember what holes they came out of, because they all have different lengths, different grades of strength, and most importantly, based on that, different torque specs when you put them back in. Now, the second thing you're going to need is something to support the subframe. I used a jack from my other car, and the reason you're going to need that is, as you're starting to loosen and take out the other bolts, the remaining bolts are going to get all the pressure from the subframe pushing it down. So if you have something supporting it, it makes it a lot easier to take out the remaining bolts, and I'm pretty sure I didn't do that, and I might have grinded some of those holes, so really important. And you're going to do the same thing when you reinstall all of the bolts. You're going to raise up that jack or whatever you got to help line up the holes. And that way, the threads of the bolt aren't doing all of the grabbing. A great example is when I was trying to pull out the bolt from the rear engine mount. I had a little bit too much height on the jack and it wasn't coming out. So I had to lower it and it just slid right out. And the last bit of advice, when you go to reinstall everything, you're going to start with the rear engine mount, hold it in place, hand tighten the bolt through, and then hand tighten everything else. And don't forget to put the rubber guard back onto the right side of the engine mount. So if the engine is here, the engine mount is here, the rubber protection goes on this side. And you need to have that there because the exhaust is running this way and that rubber acts as a heat shield to stop your engine mount from melting. So don't forget to install it on the right side. All right, guys, we made it. We are down to the last 5 bolts. One of them is going to be the bolt that's holding in the steering knuckle. And the last 4 will be the bolts attached to the brackets that are holding in the rack. Really important here, guys, before you remove that bolt, make sure that you lock down your steering wheel, because if you don't, you run the risk of damaging the clock spring mechanism in the steering wheel. And just as a quick review, the bolt that we're going to be removing is that gold one right there. To remove that bolt, it was just a 12mm on a ratchet. Here is a look at your mounting bracket on the passenger side, and it's mounted onto the firewall like this. The rack is sitting right in here. Now what you're going to see is a stud sticking right through here, and it's going to be holding this 17mm nut that you have to remove. Very easy just to reach over the fender and take this guy out. And then on the bottom hole, you're going to have this 17mm bolt. Very easy to have access to this from under the car. Helps to have an extension and a ratchet and maybe one of those swivel adapters. Now the bracket for the passenger side is still stuck on the rack, but it's pretty much the same setup. You got these 3 bolts that you have to remove. For the top 2, I had to Superman from the passenger side over the engine to get these out. And for the bottom one was a little bit more tricky. Here's a look at the tools I used to remove that bottom bolt. So this is a 17mm offset wrench. I was able to slip that in there and break it free. So that measures about 11 inches long. Just enough to get past the subframe and break it free. Once I had it broken loose with this, I came in with the ratchet side of this. And because of where the bracket is positioned, you might have to angle this a little bit to get it going. Last thing to do is to remove the rack. Alright guys, here is the money shot you guys have been waiting for. So to get the rack out, all you're going to do is grab it and then pull it toward the driver's side, and then you're going to yank it up so that you got the inner tie rod just like that. And what you're trying to do is angle it up to a point where you can get the input shaft to exit out first. It's going to tilt down, exit out the hole, and it'll look something like this. And once you're here, all you got to do is twist it and pull it out. Well, alright guys, I hope this video helped out. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.